Let's get it back to ABC's chief anchor, George Stephanopoulos. George, over to you.
Thank you, Dan. I want to pick up just where you left off with Jim, because we have John Carl here as well. You hear Jim reporting that the White House was sort of starting to lay the blame a little bit on the candidates already early in the night. It's one of the things we've seen all through this day, and maybe it's part of the character of Democrats, getting very pessimistic in these final hours before the polls closed.
They're certainly pessimistic and also laying the groundwork for, well, it could have been worse, given the environment. The president himself today in a radio interview said this is the worst midterm election map in terms of what Senate seats were up since Eisenhower in 1958. So clearly some of that. But, you know, I got to tell you, George, there was no internal debate among Democrats about whether or not the president should go out in these races. The White House wasn't pushing for this. But now that we're at this point, there is some of this talk. Well, maybe he should have gone out. And you know what? This will almost certainly be a better night for Democratic governors than in these Senate races.
That's because things are working against all incumbents right now. And David Muir, you have the exit poll that shows exactly why people just aren't happy.
Not just bad for the president and Democrats. Look at this. It's a trust issue. When we ask, do you trust the government to fix the problems of this country, 78% say sometimes or never. Just 20% actually trust the government. But here was something really interesting. I think John will probably find this interesting, that the Obama job performance across the nation, 55 disapproved. That's not surprising to you and me, George. We've been talking about this. But look at Kentucky. That number shoots up to 63%, certainly helping McConnell, even though he's not terribly popular in his own state.
And then let me bring that to Matthew Dowd, because we also saw Allison Lonergan Grimes wouldn't admit that she voted for Obama. And you've been writing and saying that you think a lot of the candidates made a mistake by running so far away from the president.
Well, I think we've had a series of midterms that have been nationalized, and the opposition party always doesn't want it to be nationalized, but we're in a national environment, and the only way I think you win in a national environment is to have a national message. The Democrats decided to run this in a state-by-state way, and in a nationalized environment, the only national message voters heard was a negative one about the president, about the economy, and about the right track of the country.
David Plouffe, give us some insight on that. Of course, you're President Obama's former campaign manager, served as a senior advisor in the White House. Take us inside that White House debate over what the president should do, how active he should be, where he should be seen.
Well, I think you do have to take cue from the candidates. I mean, they're the ones on the ballot running the campaign. I will make the point that there's a lot of votes still to be counted, but you could have over 20% of the country tonight now be represented by Democratic governors. So I think, you know, the Republicans are going to have a good night in the Senate, probably in the House, too. But I think the governor's mansions, which are going to be very important politically, but also substantively. So there's just a lot of unease out there, I think, right now. Both parties are on probation, severely so.
A lot of unease out there. Americans still concerned about the economy, but Martha Raddatz, our chief global affairs correspondent, Americans concerned about the economy, but so much of the campaign dialogue in the final weeks about foreign crises. And of course, you know, and that ties into the whole competence issue for the president and his team.
It's not what he wanted to be talking about, but we did have foreign crises. We had ISIS, we had Ebola, we had Ukraine, we had Israel and Gaza all summer long, all year long. So that's what everyone was talking about. That's what the president had to deal with, and that's what critics seized on.